would find like my brain would make these random connections. Like your main review course gets into the weeds, the
Hmm.
review notes, the audio notes, it gives you that kind of like overview of all the major concepts. And I would find it almost didn't need to get in the weeds because I'd be taking my walk, I'd be listening to you go over something, and then my brain would make this random connection back to the nuance that I'd studied
Hmm.
earlier in the week or something. I'd be like, oh,
Yeah.
well, there's a nuance here. But I wouldn't have made that connection if I wasn't, doing the review
Yeah,
notes.
exactly.
So,
Welcome to another episode of the CPA Exam Experience Podcast from SuperfastCPA. I'm Logan, and in today's episode, you're going to hear me talking to Tommy. Now, Tommy has an awesome story, and I think you're really going to love a lot of the tips that he gives in this episode because he was able to pass the CPA exams with just our study tools, and then he also learned a lot of how to study with SuperfastCPA from our free material on YouTube, on our website. He didn't buy the pro course. So that just goes to show how much great information we're giving out there for free. So make sure you check out all of our stuff. But that's not to say that you don't need the pro course, so check that out as well. Now, Tommy was able to do really well on his exams. He even got a 96 on TCP, and that was with getting the stomach flu 2 weeks of that study process. He was originally going to do it in 6 weeks, but he got the stomach flu and his kids got the stomach flu, and that made it so that he had to push it out an extra 2 weeks, and he still got a 96 on it. So obviously his study process was working really well. And at another point in his study process, he had this weird issue going on with his eyes, with his glasses, where he didn't have the right prescription. His eyes had changed and it made it so that he could hardly look at screens. It really hurt his eyes, and that made studying really difficult, which added a little bit of extra time to his study process, but he still passed the exams even with that weird issue. And I loved talking to Tommy because it was inspiring to see, even though he had some things happen during his process and even though he was busy, he was able to do really well on the exams because he really figured out his study process with Superfast CPA. So make sure you listen to the whole podcast episode. It's going to be great. Before we dive into the episode with Tommy, I just want to give one quick reminder about our Superfast CPA training webinar on superfastcpa.com. That is, again, 1 hour for free, where we will teach you the key ingredients to passing the CPA exam, again, for free. So make sure you check out the webinar to learn the key ingredients to passing the CPA exam. And after you watch that, you're going to want to learn more. So make sure you also check out becoming a Superfast CPA Pro member. Pro members get access to a lot of great stuff, including the Pro course, and they also get access to our full videos of our multiple choice question walkthrough videos. I've made multiple choice question walkthrough videos for most topics in FAR, most topics in audit, a lot of bar, a lot of reg, a lot of TCP. I am taking a little bit of a break right now because we're kind of working on our notes and our audios a little bit over again, kind of towards the end of the year, but I will be coming back to those later. But again, if you want to get the full versions of those videos to help you learn through multiple choice questions, then become a Superfast CPA Pro member. Now, with all that out of the way, let's dive straight into the interview with Tommy. So, thanks for hopping on the call today with me, Tommy. I mean, you just finished a few days ago, or found out you passed a few days ago, so this will be pretty fresh. How are you doing today?
doing well. Doing well. How are
Awesome.
you?
I'm doing good. And if I'm not wrong, you just barely got home from work, so thanks
Yeah.
for taking the time to hop on with me. Uh,
hmm
so, yeah, really, we're just going to dive into your journey and everything. So, just a bit of background. How did you like? Where were you when you wanted to become a CPA? Like, what had you been doing in accounting?
Yeah. So I I studied accounting in undergrad. So I
Mm.
graduated back in 2015. Um, and but when I graduated, I wanted nothing to do with accounting. So I I actually was a barista at Starbucks for
Oh,
a
okay.
number of years, and then I was hired on part-time as an accountant at a small nonprofit maybe
Okay.
5 years ago. And then I after about a year, I was taken on full time, left Starbucks, and um, I kind of knew CPA was where I wanted to go,
Mm.
but I was always in the back of my mind, I was afraid of the CPA exam.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of where
Yeah,
I was.
I think a lot of people hear the CPA exam and they're like, "Oh man, that's gonna be awful," and it is hard. But we'll talk about how you did. From what I saw in the forum, you did really well. So we'll dive into that. So you working at Starbucks, started the non. Are you still working at that nonprofit full time?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
nice. And so, when did you start the CPA journey? Like you knew you always wanted it in the back of your mind, but at what point did you actually start making things happen?
Yeah, somewhat recently. So I purchased I was doing a little bit of research last fall, and
Hmm.
I purchased the Becker Pro package. I saw there would be a discount on Cyber Monday. So I
Oh,
did
okay.
that. And I kind of dabbled with it for about a month. Um yeah, I had been my wife speaks Turkish, and so I had been learning
Okay.
Turkish on Duolingo. And I had the idea, what if I kind of just switch out CPA studying for Duolingo? I got Becker, I got this app, it could
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
function the same way. And that was kind of my original plan, was to kind of treat it like my Duolingo studying.
Right. Okay.
But I didn't get very far in that month, and started to reevaluate things. So
Hmm.
that's kind of when I started to think more about. I saw a couple ads for Superfast CPA and
Right.
started to think maybe I should be more aggressive with this. So
Right. So you had Becker, and so you kind of were already trying to, in your own way, implement one of the basic ideas behind Superfast CPA, where you use your phone to, to study. But I mean, and nothing against Becker, but their app is using full force everything, so it's hard to do on the go,
mhm.
as like kind of like Duolingo. So you got Superfast. Did you get the whole like the pro bundle, like everything, or what did you start with?
Yeah, I got that. The discount I think was mainly associated with the Pro bundle, so
Right.
that's what I went with.
Okay. And then, so did you also have the study tools as well? Well, I think you did because you were mentioning listening to my voice and being happy you don't have to listen to my voice anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I didn't get the full Superfast CPA Pro thing. I just got the study tools. That's what
Oh, right.
that I
Okay.
purchased. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you just got the study tools. So, you know, let's kind of talk about the differences that you started noticing. So you were kind of, I mean, had you ever really used Becker without it being that, like on the phone version? Like, did you ever do the normal approach?
You know, I think I went on just to kind of see what the different like interface was like.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't really do much studying on my
Mm-hmm.
computer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you get super fast CPA, and what happened from there? Like, did you just start trying to implement it as best you could? Like, how did that go?
Yeah, so it was a bit of a New Year's resolution. I got super fast, and honestly, part of the appeal to super fast CPA was that it I think Nate was talking about it. Hearing him talk about the approach was similar to my kind of Duolingo
Yeah.
approach, and so that was part of the appeal. It was like, oh, like I'm kind of already doing this in some ways.
Yeah.
I just have to put in the morning study session.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something I doubled down. January 6th, it was a Monday, and I was like, well, around New Year's I talked to my wife. I sat down with my wife and I was like, all right, so can we do this, like, for 2025?
Yeah.
Like, can this be our goal?
Yeah.
I kind of figured it would take the whole year.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't exactly sure about timeline and date. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of January 6th was kind of my
The
official
start date.
start
Okay.
date that I started. Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned the studying in the morning. So just curious, um, since you didn't have the pro course, did you hear that from like the webinar, or where did you get that
Yeah.
idea?
So when I got the study tools, I mean, two things. So there was the webinar that kind of went
Mm-hmm.
through. I dabbled in a lot of Nate's got a lot of free. You guys have a lot of
Yes.
free
Yeah.
stuff available, and so I kind of like dabbled, browsed your website, kind of looked through things, dug around a bit, and I kind of got what I felt
Yeah. A
like I
general
needed to
idea.
know
Yeah.
as far as the study method is concerned. And then you also have Nate has one or two videos that are accessible with just the study tools.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I watched that as well. It kind of gave the general
Yeah. The
overview.
baseline. Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay. So you start with the studying in the morning, and you have that general idea from the other resources. So how did, like, what was it like when you first started? Like, did it click, or was it like, I don't know if this is working, or how did it feel?
Well, I feel like I think I remember Nate saying something like, you do get like there is kind of like a money back guarantee if you don't feel like it's working.
Mm-hmm.
But I encourage you, wait till week like 4
Mm-hmm.
and see
Yeah.
how you're feeling at week. So initially I was a little bit nervous. I was like, am I really retaining things?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm moving through this pretty quickly. I trusted that original advice, and around week 4, I was like, maybe I'm okay. Maybe this is
Mm-hmm.
working. That's I've started to hit the topics, 3 or 4 or 5 times,
Yeah.
and I'm starting to feel like a little bit like I have a better grasp on things. So
Right. So, which exam were you going for first?
I started with FAR.
Okay, right. And so, what did your routine, like your process, look like at the beginning? So, did you study 2 hours in the morning? How did it look throughout the rest of the day as well?
Yeah, so it's the two. I mean, it's pretty much to a T what you guys recommend for the morning
Right.
session. I tried to do hour and a half, end with 30 minutes of a practice test, and then the rest of the day, what I kind of had to experiment a bit. I don't know if I did the 30-minute timer from the very beginning, but I
Mm-hmm.
started to set a 30-minute timer, um, and then at whenever it would go off, I tried to just kind of cycle through the different tools.
Mm-hmm.
So I did, the mini quizzes that you guys have, and the review notes. Those were the main things that I
Yeah.
started to cycle with.
Cycled through. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then I did some playing. One thing that's nice about Superfast CPA is, um, it gives you a general kind of template for how to study,
Right.
but then you have freedom to kind of tweak
Mm-hmm.
things and adjust things
Right.
for what you feel like is working for you. So that's kind of what I did throughout the process. I tweaked things as I went.
Yeah. And what did you tweak as you went? Like at the beginning you were kind of like trying to follow it to a T, but what did you find to be kind of what you settled on by the end?
Yeah, so I mean, so one thing that I did, and this might just be a personal preference thing, but I think I kind of preferred the the like my main review courses
Right.
questions. I,
Yeah.
I felt like it was a muscle, like I liked the super like what was nice about the Superfast CPA mini quizzes is that it enabled you to hit more topics,
Mm-hmm.
and so you could kind of cover a greater like breadth of information. But as far as I, I liked that the main review course offered the kind of the muscle of,
Yes.
this is the full strength kind of
Yep.
question.
Yep.
But I would use the review notes. So when my 30-minute timer went off, I would cycle through the review notes, and then I would do like two, and that's all I would do. I just two, um, multiple choice questions.
Okay.
When the 30-minute timer would go off, then I'd do a section of review notes, and then a couple multiple
Okay.
choice questions. Kind of, that's
Okay.
what I ended up doing.
So just to make sure I'm understanding there, so you had a timer on like your phone or your watch or whatever,
Yeah.
and every half hour you would read review notes, and then the other half hour, switching off, you would go. Was this on your phone where you would go into Becker and do two questions, or was that on your computer?
No, no. So this was just during my normal workday. So I
Right.
just would kind of have my browser open with,
Mm-hmm.
I was using Becker,
Right.
and then I kind of had a practice test up with, in practice mode. It wasn't timed, and then I would just kind of, when my timer went off, it was time. I would go on. I'd do two questions, and it was pretty
Right.
quick. Then it usually wouldn't
Yeah.
take me more than a minute or two to kind of get
Yeah.
through a couple questions, and then back to work.
And
Yeah.
would you do them like on this section you had just studied, or was that kind of like an extra re-review where it was cumulative, where you were working through
Yeah,
those?
and that's something I kind of played with. Like in the beginning, I just did as far as I had gotten.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it was, if I was on unit 4, I would do units one through 4, and then um, as I got further, it would be a greater kind of
Right.
cumulative review.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then by the last test I was doing rig, I just thought, what the heck, Superfast CPA recommends just kind of hitting everything, even if you haven't studied it
Mm-hmm.
yet. And
Yeah.
so I thought, I'll try that. That kind of makes a lot of sense. So I kind of stole that idea and I put it into
And,
the
but
Becker
still with
the
Becker.
Becker
Okay,
questions.
I
Yeah,
see.
yeah. And yeah, so that was kind of my
I
approach.
like that. I like that. That's a good idea. Like, you know, and you mentioned the idea with the supervised CP is to be able to do it quickly and get a lot of coverage. But I like that idea of, either mixing in or doing it all the time where, if you're going to be doing a short mini session, doing a couple full force questions instead of five smaller ones. I think that's a good idea to do, definitely. Because, it's still the same general idea where you're in strengthening your abilities throughout the day, but just in a little bit of a different way.
Mhm.
So that's a good idea. And how was it with the audio notes? Did you listen to those like while you're driving to and from places? How did you like those?
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, the audio notes were, I mean, before I was ever exposed to audio notes, they were the main sell for me for wanting to buy the study tools. And
Right.
that's because I think at one point I was driving my car and I was like, let me turn on a Becker lecture. I'll like listen, I won't like watch it, but I'll listen to the lecture. And it just was so glitchy, it was buggy, it didn't work, it was disconnecting, and it just like, and then I was like, maybe I could like do AI, have AI read like my textbook, and that wasn't working. And so I was like, how am I gonna get like audio? I need audio.
Yeah.
So
Real.
that was one of the main selling points. And I would listen to them really any chance I got. The Becker audio, or no, the Superfast CPA audio notes enabled me to study, it enabled me to
All
turn
the time.
almost every minute, of my
Yeah.
free time, whether I was doing the dishes, going on my after lunch walk, getting ready in the morning. Um, yeah,
Driving.
they were great. Yeah, driving. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love those were my, like when I was a Superfast CPA customer, you know, I listened to the audio notes. That was probably my main thing as well. Cause I was driving to school and to work and always out and about when I was doing it. And so that was super helpful. So that's awesome that it was so useful for you. So, you know, you've kind of, I mean, we've hit a lot of stuff because you did the process really well, but we haven't really talked about the results quite yet. So how did it go the first exam? So you're studying for FAR, and how did that go?
Yeah. So I did the like the 48-hour
Yeah,
cram
the cram
session
session.
that you guys prescribe. Um, uh, I let my friend, so I have two young kids, and so I was kind of nervous about, if I study at home all day, I'm gonna get distracted.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah.
I had some friends let me go to their house and do like the weekend at their house. Basically just kind of did as many sets of the 30 questions followed by task-based simulations, making flashcards as I go. Um, and then, yeah, so I'd scheduled my test for an afternoon, and I had my little morning morning routine in
Mm-hmm.
place. And I let myself sleep in a little bit. Um,
Yeah.
I had coffee first thing. I, had my breakfast menu. I wanted berries. I wanted oats. I wanted eggs.
Yeah. Exactly.
And
Knew what you. Yeah.
yeah, and then I also wanted. I did a little bit of audio notes and flashcards.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of throughout my morning. I kind of like peppered them in here and there. I did audio like in the car. I got there early. I was in the car doing audio notes and flashcards. And another thing, I was really nervous about. How am I going to time it so that I get the
Mm-hmm.
caffeine that I need for the test, but then also that I don't have to go to the bathroom. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was really
Yeah.
like, it's like this is a puzzle. Like how do I do it? So I packed 2 cups. I did 2 cups of coffee. One was actually a cup of tea. I would do 1 cup for right before the test, and then I put one in the locker, and then on my break I
For the
would go
break.
and I would like
Okay.
chug the cup of coffee and then go back in. So that was kind of my test day approach.
I like that. So, and so when you were at the exam, you had done the 48-hour cram session. You had kind of prepped a little bit before you went in, and so this was the first time you'd ever taken an exam, right? Uh,
Mhm.
how did it how did it go? Like, did you feel like you were prepared? Like, yeah, how did it go?
To be honest, I was just happy that I finished.
The exam.
Yeah, that was my biggest fear going. I'm a very, very slow reader.
Mhm.
I am not a very fast reader. I've always struggled with like reading comprehension on
Hmm.
SATs, growing up. Like
Yeah.
that was a struggle for me. And so I was nervous. I was like, am I going to be able to get through all the, because especially when I started studying Becker, I was like, gosh, it's taking me like 10 minutes to read this question. Like, how am I going to do this in time? So, um, the the regular testing of 30 questions was
Hmm.
helpful because it over time I started to get a little bit faster,
Hmm.
and it gave me a sense of realistically how many questions can I do in a minute, or like how much time is it taking per question.
Hmm.
And so for each test, it was a little bit different because the number of
They have different
questions and
amounts. Yeah.
testlets
Hmm.
is different. And so I would kind of do a tailor-made, for me, I need to get through testlet one by like the 50-minute mark. And then testlet two, I need to get through by an hour and 40 minutes. And then I
Hmm.
kind of like, and then I figured, okay, so then how many minutes does that leave me per simulation? And so I kind of
Hmm.
did that for each exam using kind of my history of how many minutes per question on average,
Yeah.
from the tests, the 30 sets of 30 questions.
I like that. Honestly, you thought very similarly to how I've thought about it. Um, as far like I've told people that time on exam day is super important, like time management. And you hear the 1 minute average and things like that, which is a good goal to shoot for, but it's not always realistic or necessary. Like for example, FAR, which is the one you took first, is 50 questions, 50 multiple choice questions. And so if you want to get through those 50 multiple choice questions by the 2 hour mark or before, you actually have like 2 to 2.5 minutes per question instead of 1 minute per question. So I like that you kind of like thought that through and planned that out. And one other thing I want to talk about, just because I agree it's such a big deal, practicing the 30 questions, it builds that confidence and that ability to
Mhm.
actually be able to go perform on exam day. And so actually kind of going back to the re-review really quick. So at first, were you able to do 30 questions in 30 minutes, or what did that
No,
look like at first?
no. Um, and to be honest, for better or worse, I didn't really get to doing the questions in test mode. So that
Hmm.
is like having them be timed until I would wait until I had made it through all the units in
Okay.
in the course. So usually that was like, I would have like a week or two where I was kind of like a final review,
Right.
and um usually at that point I would start doing in test mode. And I would be like, okay, I really need to try to be able to finish 30 questions in a reasonable amount of time. And then if I didn't get to review them right then, I would review them throughout the day,
Okay.
or whenever I could get to it.
Okay. And so since you weren't doing it in test mode initially, were you still doing 30 questions in 30 minutes, or were you
No,
doing
I
like
would just do as
10 or
I would do
as
as
many as you
many as I
could?
could,
Okay. But you were
and
doing them in practice mode, so you were reviewing them right away.
yeah,
I
right.
see. I
So
see.
so maybe I would do 10, or I would
Okay.
do, 15, 16, 17 as I got a little bit faster. But no, I was not
Yeah.
able to do 30, especially at the beginning.
Yeah. I found the same thing myself. Like I personally, for my last three exams, because I did audit first and that one took me the longest. So I had been studying it for so long that I was able to do 30 questions. But with all my other exams, I did 20 questions a day for my re
Mhm.
review, just because that kind of for me was the sweet spot to be able to do it, get through it in time, and then review it. Um, and what did that look like? How did that translate to like, your final review, and like what were your scores looking like when you did start doing the test mode and stuff like that?
Honestly, so the scores when I did practice mode versus test mode didn't change much.
Because
Uh,
you were still putting in the full effort either time, right?
yeah, right. But my score, honestly, my scores generally hung between like the 70s and the 90s.
Yeah, the
Um,
perfect spot.
yeah, kind of like throughout my study process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly what we tell people to shoot for, so that's good. Uh, so all that out of the, with all that said, did you pass far your first exam?
Yeah. Yeah,
Awesome.
I got an 80 on FAR, which I was really happy about because I was like, okay, this I mean, first of all, this is working. My approach is
Yes.
working. But then second of all, I was like, I don't know, I feel like studying for the CPA exam is different than school because it's
Oh
like
yeah.
you don't want to overstudy. Everything I kept hearing was, don't ace these things. Like you don't need to ace these
Mm-hmm.
things.
Yep.
Just study enough to pass. That's the ideal approach. And so I was like, okay, good. Like I didn't overstudy, but I also, had a nice,
A little
buffer.
barrier. Yeah.
Yeah. So I felt good about my
Yeah.
results. Yeah.
I mean, the 80 is a fantastic score. And that was the first time you'd ever taken an exam and your process was already working. So, fast forward through the rest of it. So you took FAR, and then how did the rest go? If I'm not wrong, did you pass 4 for 4, like all of them first try? Or,
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what did that, like after you've passed FAR, you knew your process was working. And from there, what did you do? Like, did you do a similar thing for the other exams, or is there anything that you changed?
Yeah, yeah. So my approach got a little bit messy after FAR, and that's because I turned on your audio notes on the drive home from the test for audit. I was like, I don't know how I felt about that, but I'm just gonna go for it. Like I'm
Hmm.
gonna put my head down and I'm gonna pretend like I'm not gonna
Pretend
stop.
like you
So
passed. Yeah.
yeah, and that was hard to be honest. Like it was hard to really be fully committed until I got my results.
Hmm. Hmm.
But it gave me a little bit of a jump start, I felt,
Yeah.
moving on to the next test. Um, and so yeah, I just kind of started audit and I started moving through. Um, but about I don't remember how far into it, maybe like 4 weeks into it, I started to get this really, really like debilitating eye strain. Like
Oh.
it was kind of weird. Like it got to the point where I couldn't look at the computer screen. Like I couldn't
Mm.
open my eyes and look at the computer screen. It was weird. Um, it ended up being, I think I just had a really old prescription. Like my glasses were too old,
Yeah.
and maybe also combined with like my eyesight was also changing a little bit
Hmm.
extra fast or something. I don't know. So and that took me some time. It took me some time
To figure
to
that out.
admit that, like, yeah, to figure it out first of all, and then also to get an eye appointment scheduled to get new glasses because it can take some time to get your
Hmm.
glasses in once you
Hmm.
get your
Yep.
prescription and whatnot. So like I ended up taking like a 6 week. I just couldn't do the morning study session for something like 6 weeks, which was I was really getting discouraged because I was like, all that I'm doing is my like mini sessions throughout the day. I was still able to for the most part, I was still able to do the mini sessions throughout the day. And then I
Hmm.
and then I really leaned on the audio notes for audit just
Yeah.
because like I was having trouble looking at screens.
How did
And
that go for work?
you know, I it was hard, but there was something about the combined, like getting a little bit less sleep because I'm waking up at 5 in the morning and then looking at a screen first thing like that was just really
In the
that just
dark?
really like in the
Yeah.
dark. Yeah, so like that I don't know, there's something about that in particular that was extra difficult.
Mm.
um I mean, I was still struggling. All my coworkers were like, Tommy, like you keep rubbing your eyes. Like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, yeah, I'll make it. So, yeah, well, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But I got my new glasses.
You got,
I had
okay.
I had a few weeks left, and audit took me 3 months. But I
Okay.
felt like, given the circumstances,
It
that
was
was
really more
that
like
was
6
okay.
weeks.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
Ish.
I
Yeah.
the 6 weeks of audio notes and then mini sessions throughout the day, those count for something
Hmm.
because you're getting the review and whatnot.
Yeah. So did you feel like you were still relatively prepared as far as once you did start feeling better, like when you started studying a bit more normally, did you feel like, okay, I have seen some of this stuff, like you didn't feel like you were starting totally fresh?
No, and that's what was great about, still doing the mini
Hmm.
sessions throughout the day was I,
Hmm.
I I felt like I was able to, for the most part, maintain what I had
Your
where as
habits?
far as I
Yeah.
has gotten.
Okay.
Um, Audit though, in general, I was the most nervous about, just because
Hmm.
I just felt like the way they would word the questions, everything was a trick. It took me a really
Yeah.
long time to understand, like, what is the AI CPA doing? Like
Hmm.
what are they really trying to ask here?
Hmm.
And what are their tricks? And so that was, I was just nervous, how am I gonna
Yeah.
do? So
Oh, I definitely can understand. Audit, to me, a lot of people struggle with FAR because it does have a lot of material. But if people don't struggle with FAR, then almost guaranteed think they're probably going to struggle with audit because
mm,
it is just so different, completely different than any of the other exams. And I say this in the audio notes, like it's just a completely different exam. Like all the little teeny nuances. That's exactly what
mhm,
you were saying. Like, what are they actually trying to ask me here? Are they just
mm.
trying to trick me with these words? So yeah, I definitely can understand that. But you passed it. So how did that one go? Like when you went into the test, were you still like super nervous, or did it turn out okay?
I mean, I came out of each test, except for I mean, TCP, I had a little bit of a different feeling coming out of, but I came out of each test feeling like, oh gosh, I don't know. I just don't
Yeah.
know if I passed that thing.
Hmm.
But I mean, I felt fine. Like I was like,
Hmm.
I made it through everything. I answered all the
Hmm.
questions. Which was another big win for me. I was like, I made it through.
Yeah.
And so I kind of did the same thing. I started listening to TCP on the drive home.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like I did start studying the day after, but always the day of I was like, no, I'm done. So
Yeah,
that's pretty crazy that you
it,
were
it became
willing. Yeah.
something of like a habit, I guess.
Yeah.
Listening to the next one on the drive home.
Right. Right. And I bet, but you were mentioning like I mean, it's crazy to me that it's still crazy to me after even though I've been working for Superfast CPA for like over 2 years now that people are listening to my voice all day
Oh.
long, and it's like, oh man, that must be horrible. So, uh, congrats for making it through TCP and audit because those were the ones that were my voice.
uh,
Um, and so you get through FAR, you get through audit, and then I remember you took TCP before you took reg. So what was that experience like? Because you did mention in the forum that it is possible to pass TCP before reg. So what did you find with that?
yeah, I mean, I was a little bit nervous doing it. I regularly frequented. There's a Reddit CPA um,
Uh-huh.
forum that I would go on, and I would kind of like, if I had questions, I would dabble in there, as well as the Superfast CPA forum.
Right. Yeah. I remember
And
you asking me questions. Yeah.
I saw people, I saw some mixed advice on TCP, but I did see people saying, I had no tax experience, I passed TCP, you can do it before you do rig. And so I was like, you know what? Maybe I can go for this, because I really wanted to hit the July window and not
Right.
have to wait till October.
Hmm.
And so that was kind of my approach.
Right. Uh, so you were able to take it in July, but you only found out the score like in August, right? Like sometime in August, or was it in September?
I found out the score like 5 days before I found out reg.
Wow. Yeah. The
Yeah,
discipline score releases have been super lame. So you took TCP, went straight into reg, found out you passed TCP after you had already taken reg, and
yeah,
then you
yeah.
found out your score for reg. Okay. And how
Uh-huh.
did you do on audit, TCP, and reg? Did you get 80 as well, or what did those look like?
So audit I got an 86, and then reg I got a 93. I was
Wow.
I was pretty surprised, to be
Yeah.
honest.
And then
I don't know.
TCP was that one. How was that one?
So again, I said I came out
It
of
was a little bit
TCP
different.
feeling a little bit different than the other ones. I kind of felt like, I don't know, I kind of felt like, it was maybe a little bit too straightforward. Like I was uncomfortable
Mm.
for a different reason. I was like,
You're like,
maybe
was that too easy?
maybe like they threw some tricks in there that I just
Hmm.
wasn't expecting.
Hmm.
But I think it was just that straightforward. Like I'm not gonna say easy, because TCP, it's really hard getting partnerships, S corps, and C corps straight.
Hmm.
Because there's all these different kind of nuanced rules as far as what's a
Right.
taxable thing, what's not taxable, and how does it affect basis a little bit differently. And so, like, getting those straight was it took me some time. So I'm not gonna say it was easy, but But it was more straightforward, I felt, and the
Right.
content, like there's just less content on it,
Yes.
which is the biggest easy thing about it is
Yes.
it's just not as vast.
Yeah,
So
that's how it is with all the discipline. They're all a lot smaller. Although I will say I think bar is still just as hard as the core exams. That's my opinion. But so you really, I mean, you really crushed the exams. You did, and you did this over the course of about 9 months, right? Because you, or maybe more like 8 months. Because you, when did you take reg?
yeah, if you don't count the month that I dabbled, from like Cyber
From like
Monday
December.
to
Okay, yeah.
December, if you kind of start from January 6th, which is
Hmm.
when I really started to focus, I finished my reg test August 29th. So I felt really, my goal was, 8 months. I like from like, and I made a comment about this in the forum, but I sat down and I journaled. Nate recommended, have like your like mission statement,
Right.
have your
Hmm.
like goal, have your reward that you put in place, and I think that's really important. I knew that would be important, and so I kind of journaled a couple days the beginning of January trying to figure out, when do I really want to get this done? What do I
Hmm.
want my goal to be? I was like, 8 months sounds like a really good goal for me. And it was cool because that's what it ended up
Yeah,
that's what it
almost
ended up
exactly
being.
right.
So yeah.
Yeah. Um, so I have a couple questions that aren't like super related to like exactly what we were just talking about. But first question is, we haven't really talked about your approach with the Sims, and I know a lot of people like me to ask about the Sims because that's something that a lot of people can struggle with at different times. So I know what your morning sessions look like and your mini sessions, but did you study extra on the weekends? How did you study Sims? What did that all look like?
Yeah, I did study extra on the weekends. I don't know what you guys cover in the pro course as far as what you recommend for Sims,
Hmm.
but what I basically did was, I tried what I did glean from, the videos that I could
Yeah.
access for free, was that you guys recommended doing longer days on the weekends, and so that's what I tried to do. I tried to focus on Sims, in particular on the Sims, like the for which I had already completed the MCQs. Um,
Okay.
so I would kind of like, I would do my regular 2 hour morning routine. So I would just do
Yeah.
MCQs, push through the units in the morning with the 30-minute or 30 question testlet, and
Yeah.
then for like my day, like during the day, I would try to get 2 good sessions. Fortunately, kids have take 2 naps a day generally. so
Yeah, when
so
they're
I
that
would
little,
try to
yep, yep,
I'd try to use those windows especially for study.
right.
And yeah.
Okay. How old are your kids? Right. I guess I was about to say when you were studying, but actually that was this year. So, uh, yeah.
Yeah, so my daughter turned 3 this year, while I was studying, and my son turned 1 while I was
Okay.
studying.
Yeah. So you have, I have young kids as well, and I had young kids when I was studying as well. So I know the feeling. Um, in fact, that was another question that I had that I'll ask in just a second. But um, so when you were studying The Sims, how did you approach them when you were like in the session actually looking at the sim? Like how did you study them?
I I did I did work through the Sims. Every once in a while I would get to a sim where I have no clue. And I would just submit the answer and,
Yeah, and
go
learn from it.
through. Yeah, sometimes I would watch the instruction video, sometimes I would just read through, sometimes I thought it was sufficient to just read through. Usually I would Usually if I watched the video, I would kind of regret it. I'd like, I could have gotten I got everything that I needed from just
Hmm.
reading, the answer,
Yeah,
like the explanations. Like, I don't know why I watched the video, but I think I always kind of hoped that they would have some key like piece of
some
insight.
little thing.
And
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
and so I probably wasted time watching the videos, but sometimes I would.
Hmm. So it's kind of just a mixture of whatever you felt like you needed to do to understand that sim, whether it was working through it or if you're lost, just submitting it or whatever the case was. It was just, but the important thing seems to be that you did take the time to work on the sims, like that. You actually took hours to work on them each weekend. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, no, I kind of determined that it was important to work on the Sims, just because I kind of didn't spend a lot of time on Sims on
Hmm.
FAR. Like of all the tests, FAR was the one where I kind of didn't spend as much time on the Sims, and I really felt weak on the Sims
Hmm.
for the FAR test. So I think that that kind of experience made me feel like, maybe I should do my due diligence with these.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
yeah.
And that was on Saturday and on Sunday. You just did it on both weekend days, or was it a little bit more focused on Saturday?
I did church Sunday morning, so that usually left less time on Sunday for
Right.
me. But Saturday, I would do the morning and the afternoon.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, and then kind of circling back, because this was the other question that I had. So, what was it like studying with two little kids? Because for me, I had a 20-month-old and a 3-month-old when I started,
Oh wow.
and then it took me 7 months. So like they were little the whole time, uh, and I had to study at work. That was just what I knew I needed to do because otherwise I was not going to get anything done at home. So how did
Mhm.
you manage that? Because you said on the weekends it was with like naps and stuff like that, but how did it look throughout the week?
Yeah, and to be honest, this was probably the hardest thing about studying for me was leaving my wife to care for the kids from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m.
Hmm.
Just because, and it sounds like you understand because you
Hmm.
had
That's
little kids.
exactly what I
So
had to do.
if you
Yep.
if you had little kids, like you'll understand that, you know, kids are up all night, they're wetting the bed, they have a cold, and so they're just not
Hmm.
sleeping like they normally do. They're awake, they're teething, they're awake, they need to nurse. And so you're up and down all night.
Hmm.
And then, your 5 hour alarm, your 5 a.m.
Five
alarm
o'clock.
goes off,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh man. So like but I mean, to some extent, and then the other thing is kids get up when the sun gets up. So,
Hmm.
it's 5 a.m., 5:30 a.m., and the kid's walking into the room, and it's sort of like my wife's on duty. Like you think, oh, 5 a.m. to 7 a.m., your wife can just sleep. It's like, no, she's on duty, like at
Hmm.
5, whenever the
Yeah.
kids whenever the kids are up. So I felt like that would be, and then, well, yeah. So I knew that would be a big sacrifice for my wife,
Right.
and it was hard. It was hard, and to be honest, I wasn't religious about my morning session, especially like for far I was, but as things went on, like,
Yeah.
I was like, my wife needs to sleep, or I need to sleep. There was a little bit of compromise that started to happen, which I don't recommend,
Right.
but it's what happened.
Yeah. And I mean it, and that's exactly why I personally chose to go into work early every day because I knew that. And yeah, but I mean kudos to both of our wives because I mean, having to take on that extra responsibility of not having us to help them as much or really at all so we can do that. I mean, it makes a big difference. I definitely wouldn't be able to do it with if my without my wife.
Yeah,
But it, so basically what you're saying though is like most of the time, you did study at home, but then your wife, it was just kind of like an understanding that your wife was going to most of the time go take care of them once they got up so that you could study. Is that right?
yeah, yeah. That
Okay.
was kind of the understanding.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I was curious how you, cause yeah, it still happens. I have a 4.5-year old, a 3-year old, and a 10-month-old, and
Hmm.
there's just always something that happens either late at night or early in the morning, just almost always something. So, um, got to figure some way out to do it. But I mean, I think we've pretty much hit most of the things um, that I typically try to cover. We've talked about your morning sessions, your mini sessions, your sims. Um, I guess one more question was, what did you make flashcards throughout your process? Is that something that you utilized?
Yeah, so that was a mistake that I made early on that, I remedied, and I kind of figured out a rhythm later on as I went. But for far, I would make flashcards, kind of as I was doing my morning study sessions,
Mm-hmm.
kind of from the start. And, I use Brainscape,
Right.
which is great.
Yeah.
I recommend that. But I exceeded 100 flashcards on Unit 2 alone. And I was like, I'm
Yeah.
spending a lot of time on flashcards
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if it's necessary. So I told myself I can't make flashcards anymore. I'm not allowed to. So I
Mm-hmm.
didn't make flashcards until I got through all of the content. And then I was,
Okay.
so,
Kind of like during
so
your
I,
final review.
yeah, I gave myself, I don't know, for every test, I gave myself 1 or 2 weeks for final review. And then allowed myself to make flashcards. You know, if I got a question wrong, if I got a simulation wrong, I would do the flashcards.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, that's exactly the idea. Like, and you discovered that on your own. Like, if you're making flashcards on everything, they kind of become pointless because the whole point of flashcards is to take the things that you personally struggle with and turn them into something that you can study more easily and turn into a strength. But if you have 500 flashcards, it's too difficult to do that. So it sounds like you discovered that on your own. Um, but yeah, I think that, is there any other part of your process or any thoughts you had about the CPA that we haven't gotten to cover yet?
Um, I'm trying to think if there's any glaring oversight. Um, I mean, I did jot down some notes. I guess this is just kind of like one more tip that I learned, and it was something that I wanted to.
Pass on.
I kind of wish I had done this from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that I did with Reg, and I kind of did it with TCP too, but um, for me in particular, so this might not be everybody, but for me in particular, my natural tendency is kind of like slow and perfect. So it made it hard, I think, for me to move through the content at like a reasonable pace.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I underestimated the mastery that would come with the re-review.
Right.
And so what I made myself do was, okay, so make a schedule, figure out how many questions you need to get through in order to, have however long you want for your final review. And
Mm-hmm.
then at the start of every day, set that goal. Say, okay, I need to get through, this many questions from this module to this module or whatever, and do this many task-based simulations or whatever. And you have that daily goal. And there was something about naming like the daily goal of
Mm-hmm.
that really helped me. It's sort of like, okay, I don't have time like to linger on this
Mm-hmm.
question if
Mm-hmm.
I have to get through, 50 questions today. And so that really helped me. It kind of like kept me going, and
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
I would want to get stuck on something, it was like, I don't understand this, but I'll just have to move on. And so
Mm-hmm.
that was good for me because the re-review really does provide mastery over time.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned
To let
to
go.
ignore, to kind of
Yeah.
ignore the feeling of unease and to just trust, I will master it when I
Yeah.
get to it again
Yep.
later.
Yeah. That's honestly what you just said is exactly what I think a lot of people do need to realize. And very similar to what I did. Like, I did the same thing. I counted how many questions there were in my review course, laid out how many weeks I wanted to get through them in, and then I would do that many questions per day. So very similar to what you did. So I really like that idea because I did it, and uh, and but especially, yeah, like, planting the seeds is, you do want to get an understanding if you can, but it's not about perfection, because you're not trying to become a professor in this. So the deeper understanding, and, as you said, the mastery really does come from the re-review. If there's one thing that I think that people are usually missing from their process, is the daily review. I think that it makes a huge difference, and you've mentioned it multiple times. um, would you agree with that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, the daily review does. It just keeps it fresh. It keeps
Mm-hmm.
it fresh. Oh, and this is an extra little thing to throw in there. One of the like the genius of the review and audio notes that that you wouldn't get if you just did the random testlets
Mm-hmm.
is there's no guarantee with the random set of questions that you're going to hit all the topics, all the major topics that you
Mm-hmm.
need to um, over and over again. Like you might just like luck of the draw, you might just get 5 questions
On one topic.
on one topic, on loan interest or something weird. And so what's nice about the review notes is it guarantees that, if you're doing it, because whether it's the reading it or doing the audio, is you do hit every topic, every major
Yeah.
topic at least. And I would find, like, my brain would make these random connections. Like, your main review course gets into the weeds. The
Hmm.
review notes, the audio notes, it gives you that kind of like overview of all the major concepts. And I would find it almost didn't need to get in the weeds, because I'd be taking my walk, I'd be listening to you go over something, and then my brain would make this random connection back to the nuance that I'd
Hmm.
studied, earlier in the week or something. I'd be like, oh,
Yeah.
well, there's a nuance here. But I wouldn't have made that connection if I wasn't, doing the review
Yeah,
notes.
exactly.
So
Yeah, that I love. I love that you just said that. Um, yeah, I don't really have anything else to say because that's perfect. Um, I mean, you've mentioned a lot of awesome benefits that and a lot of great ideas that you had throughout your whole process. And I think as we kind of finish up here, I have two last questions for you. So again, you've already mentioned a lot of this stuff throughout the video, but the first question is, what would you say were the main benefits that you got from Superfast CPA?
yeah, so I actually I actually do have some notes here that I jotted down that I wanted to cover, um, on this in particular.
Hmm.
So I wrote down like four major benefits of your study tools, and it gives you the scope of each test in a form that's easy to digest.
Hmm.
Oftentimes I come into this test, I'm like, what is the breadth of this thing? Like, what
Hmm.
am I going to cover? And by the third listen through of the audio notes, I had a grasp. This is
Hmm. Yeah.
generally the scope. And so
Yeah.
that was number one. Number two was it gives you a level understanding of all the major concepts. I mentioned this. Your review course will give you the nuance. It'll get into
Yeah.
the weeds. Um, you get kind of all the major concepts at a high level with
Hmm.
the review notes. Um, they're short enough to go over and over. And so, like, as you go over it like third or
Yeah.
fourth time,
Repeat
it really starts
exposure.
to
Hmm.
sink in. And then the last thing is what I just said. The whole your notes they guarantee that you're gonna hit all of the concepts.
Hmm.
That a random set of questions might miss.
Yeah.
So those are the four things that I felt were really
Were beneficial.
really helpful about, yeah, your study tools.
I love it. And leading straight from that question into the last question that we always like to ask everybody. And again, even if it's something we've already talked about, but what would be your top two or three tips to somebody who's still going through the exam? What would you say to them?
Um, don't underestimate the kind of the initial goal setting and planning, that Nate talks about in the beginning. Having your little why, knowing your why,
Hmm.
um, and kind of having a rough timeline of like a goal,
Hmm.
because there's you guys are right. Like you need a little bit of pressure. Like I did.
Yeah.
I needed, if I ever didn't have pressure, if I ever like hadn't scheduled my test yet or something, that you need that motivation.
Hmm.
And I don't really like putting pressure on myself, but I needed it. Like I needed the
Hmm.
pressure to help push me. So that's definitely one thing. Um, I guess another thing is, um, if you if you're consistent, if you kind of do everything, feeling uneasy is okay. Like I had a lot of moments where I just was really second guessing myself, and not sure if I was retaining things, if I was grasping things, and I mean it turned out okay. So
Yeah.
so I think if having a how to study that you can just kind of lean on kind of
Hmm.
frees you up from worrying about how, and it really helps you to really focus on the
The
content,
actual
actually
learning.
studying,
Yeah.
yeah, like actually learning. And um, kind of you don't have to worry about, like, is what I'm doing effective, is what I'm doing working. I can just kind of trust in that it is. But yeah, there is a balance. There's a balance of, figuring out the how, like how to do this CPA thing, but then also the whole, like, the what, the content.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
you got to figure that out.
Yeah. I mean, you've had a lot of fantastic tips and advice, and it's a really cool story, Tommy. Thank you for getting on the call today with me, Tommy. I think that you, again, have an awesome story. So I'm really happy that you were able to share that. And I think a lot of people are going to benefit from it. So, yeah, thank you. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, likewise. All right. Thanks, Logan.
Yeah, no problem. All right, that was the interview with Tommy. Again, he had a lot of great tips. He did really well on the exams. Again, I'm still super surprised that he got a 96 on TCP. I don't think he mentioned that in the interview, but he messaged me afterwards and said, hey, make sure you mention this because I feel like SuperfastCPA helped me to get this, so I wanted to mention that. Again, 96 on TCP. He did really well on his exams, even with the stomach flu at one point and with having that weird issue with his eyes where he could hardly look at screens for a while. He was still able to pass the exams. And I think Tommy's story is great that no matter what you're going through, you can make it through these exams. You can push through. As long as you have a good study process, you can pass these exams. So I'm glad that I was able to talk to Tommy. He had a great story. Now, before you go, just one more reminder about our Superfast CPA training webinar on superfastcpa.com. Again, it's 1 hour, it is free, and we will teach you the key ingredients to passing the CPA exam so you don't waste months or even years of your time failing exams. And after you watch that, you're going to want to learn more, so make sure you also check out becoming a Superfast CPA Pro member to get access to the Pro course and our full multiple choice question walkthrough videos on the member forum. Now, if you liked the video, make sure to like it and leave a comment or leave a rating in your favorite podcast app. Thanks for watching or listening, and we will see you in the next episode.